Here we are live on Goddess Vibrations. I'm here today with my co-host Kirti Srivastava. We are going to be answering your questions about my last episode, my solo episode, where I talked about my dissertation research on mindfulness and female arousal. It got a lot of people stirred up, thinking, asking questions, and that's exciting for us. So I said, hey, Kirti, how about we just talk about these questions? And in particular, what kind of was coming up through the questions too was this Madonna horror complex, which we talked about in our last episode together. So I think we're going to be looping back around to that. But anyway, here we are. I'm Natasha. I'm a former therapist turned mind body health consultant, PhD researcher in female sexuality. This is Kirti. She's a sensuality healer, former traditional classical Indian dancer, movement specialist. I don't like to use the word tantra because I know you don't always like to use the word tantra, but basically you're bringing the foundation and the integrity back.
Ooh, I love your introductions.
Yeah, to that word, and but also with your own like little twist. And you can do that because, you know, this stuff comes from your culture, like a culture that you're deeply rooted in. So you got the freedom. You can do that.
It's cool to be me now.
It's cool to be you. Welcome. Although I think it was probably always cool to be you, even if you didn't feel like that because of, you know, the way that people perceived skin colors and food, and
right.
all the things, the shoulds.
Yes.
And all the bullshit. Let's just say that. So, okay. So I talked about mindful arousal or mindfulness and female arousal last episode. I've been talking about this stuff. I guess I wrote my first paper on it in 2015. So I've been talking about it since then. And it's always, people are still always like, wow, wow, wow. And that just makes me realize how little we know still about female sexuality, even after this big boom where almost every Instagram influencer is talking about tantra or female sexuality or all this stuff. There's still so much that's unknown. And in particular, how it relates to this deep, energetic, and spiritual and emotional connection, and as well as those connections with our culture and us within our culture. And I think that's the piece that people are missing a lot of times, right? Is this to realize how deep it goes. We can't just stay on the surface and expect these like profound, powerful experiences to last a lifetime, 20, 30 years through a relationship, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the foundation for female arousal it's really engaging the feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, even feminine energy, though our male counterparts or our male friends have feminine energy in the female body is Devi energy, goddess energy. Masculine energy in a male body is considered Devic energy or God energy. So it's like God and goddess energy. We have both in us. However, depending on what your genitalia kind of represents in terms of the energetic poles, influences the whole interaction with other human beings with other genetic poles going on, right? So when we work on arousing the female body, we're really arousing the goddess.
Yes. Again, so I go deep and then Kirti goes like 10 levels deeper. That's always how it works. So you bring in the spiritual, the goddess, like the traditions. I love it. And I think, you know, we forget how interconnected all of this stuff is. I've been in deep reflection today, having some of my own cave time and just really reflecting on the ways that I am a product of the culture that I was raised in, even, you know, despite my protests at certain points in time of not liking how the culture around me operated, and still there's some things like that. And I thought about children. You know how children are just sponges for their caretakers and whoever's around them. And they learn through watching and embodying and just absorbing the energy, really. And even in a couple, you know, even if they don't talk about what they're fighting about, the child feels it and it'll act it out. because it's the energy, it's emotional connections, right? And so you think about children or young souls or whatever on this planet, they are sponges for this culture, this world culture, this patriarchal world culture. They're sponges. They're just acting it out. They don't even know, they don't even have a conscious understanding. So I kind of felt like all of us have to come to this point of waking up and unwinding, this patriarchal culture and this like oppressive culture and this racist culture and all these things that are going on. And there shouldn't be all this guilt about it or shame, because you didn't know. You were just a little, utensil for the collective energy. And I think what probably spurred this reflection today too is our talk about human design. The other day we were talking about projectors and generators and manifesting generators and all of this, and how they have different roles of like expanding or feeling into energies. And so everyone is going to be one of those little children that's programmed to their culture until they get to the point where they're like, wait a minute, how do I feel? How do I want to do this? What works for me, rather than what I'm just reflecting back to whatever's already there. So then we start to create. So you're big on, you have your new moon event, which is creativity consciousness. And especially last month, so rooted in overturning oppression, claiming your sovereignty, right? Creativity is how we do that. We've said it before in past episodes, but I love Prince. Prince said this: if you want to escape all these isms, if you want to escape oppression, create. Just start to create, because now you're the boss and you're doing it. So I feel like this comes over into these questions about female arousal and mindfulness and female sexuality, because female sexuality has never been a priority. It's always been, this male gaze or this male lens, and of course, using the female as an instrument to express that or whatever else. So how are we, even as females, to know how our equipment operates when there's virtually no research, like very little research? And I was so upset to do a quick Google Scholar search last week and find that they're really, it's still kind of the same old stuff.
Really?
There's not I thought there would have been kind of like an explosion. And again, I was just a few minutes I spent scanning, but not so much there on healthy, thriving, like healing sexuality, more so like sexual dysfunction after cancer, sexual dysfunction after this, dysfunction. But it's only labeled dysfunctional because we don't understand it. And we're comparing it to this linear, surface level, quick, results oriented kind of masculine energy, which there's times when that's needed. And also there's this other piece, right? So we're keeping that in balance. So I've just been thinking about it, especially with one of our viewer questions, which was, we can start with this one. I want to get your thoughts on this on the record, recorded. If you finally find your way to kind of move through this culture and you have this amazing sex session with your partner. So this is a viewer question. And she's like, I've had this amazing sex session with my partner, but then the next day I feel like embarrassed or ashamed, or like, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. And why is this happening to me when I've been with this person for 20 years and we're infatuated with each other? What is going on here? Right. And I think a lot of it points to culture. Clearly they have a lot of good, healthy energy flowing in their relationship. Right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely culture, our beliefs around what's acceptable in the bedroom comes, a lot from our early programming of the movies we saw, what was kind of allowed in terms of what we were exposed to with our own parents, intimate relationships, what types of movies were we informed with, how did we think of sex versus making out and our first sexual experiences. Those are all very, very cultural. So yes, I definitely would say that. And it kind of proves the point that sexuality is so directly linked to our brain and this concept of neuroplasticity, because it just is proving that as this couple is evolving, the partnership, it sounds like the woman is actually finding new levels of vulnerability. So what an opportunity for her counterpart to step into this space of like, wow, I get to navigate this new level of vulnerability. And clearly she's willing to open up deeper. And sometimes when we open up deeper, we can have like a hangover feeling after we show all our cards, especially to people that we care of, is against the programming that we were raised with. But there's really
so hell yes for her to even get there.
That's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Really. Something to celebrate. And I would say the next level is to share that with her partner, that she's enjoying the experiences so much, and she's finding the next day having these pullback of questionings. And a lot of times when we start to go into deep trance-like states with our expression, where we are completely just pure transmission, after, you're not in it in the moment, but afterwards you'll start to replay the whole thing and be like, okay, wait, what did I do? What did I say? And what happens is the inner critic or the mental judge part of us comes in, and usually that's a representation of an elder who raised us, and it's their voice that's like, oh my gosh, did you really do that? And what were you thinking to do that? Or it was some authoritative voice that shaped and molded that part of us. You know, for artists a lot, it's their art teachers or their dance teachers. Like after they perform, maybe they do something improvisational and like, oh, you know, they do some new stuff. The next day you might think about it and you start replaying your performance, but not with what it felt like for you. Now now you're looking back at the past. So it's like a critical eye. So when these things happen, what I believe to be happening is that you are stretching, not breaking. You're pushing the limits. It's like saran wrap, and you can like gently push that limit with your partner and say, wow, like this is coming alive for me. And what an awesome, gorgeous opportunity for the counterpart to say, first of all, feel fucking good and that you're able to have your partner open up to these new levels. And like, what do you need to make this feel joyful and blissful and exploratory versus shameful and, you know, I guess resentful or regretful in any way.
Yeah. And don't you think that the capacity to witness somebody else in their transformations or their growth is really related to how comfortable you are with your own self and your own, you know, growth and expansiveness, and
Totally.
just like giving yourself a bigger container again for going there. And I feel like maybe, I don't know. I'm just going to pause. I'm going to see what you have to say, because I have a lot of thoughts going through my head right now. I don't know if I want to go there yet.
It's even to stretch, to feel vulnerable the next day. Mm-hmm. That process is already in action, where there is a demand to make a larger container, that this is there's an expansion happening. Mm-hmm. So that's the beautiful part of discomfort. The other side of discomfort is that there's an expanded desire. There's a desire to expand. And because there's a limitation, you're perceiving, like some part of you perceives that there's like a not able to expand, which causes discomfort. Mm-hmm. So you might have a totally expansive experience, but anytime we look back on an experience, instead of being in the moment, if it's with the critique or feedback, we have to be really careful about that, because that's not allowing us to widen the container. However, if we're able to look back at an experience and celebrate where you stretched, now the container starts to have the ability in the subconscious and in the conscious mind to expand. But we're trained in this, I'm going to say our Western culture of the United States, we're actually trained to look back and provide critique and feedback. I mean, look at Yelp. Look at when do people leave reviews most of the time? Is it like, oh, I really want to support. Most of the time, when people leave reviews, it's like, oh, I fucking had a horrible experience. I'm going to people need to know about what happened, and I'm going to report that. Mm-hmm. So in some way, we have allowed that to whenever we look at past experiences, instead of just accepting them as they were and seeing everything as forward advancement and growth, we tend to look back and regret. And there's also this potential to, like, cover up and protect more of your expression because you feel that, oh, it was too much. But that's an old story. Mm-hmm. That's overwriting a new experience. And so it takes practice to notice when you're overwriting new experiences with an old lens, like you're looking at it with an old lens prescription. Mm-hmm. You're in a new experience, but you've got some old glasses on. It's not going to feel and seem warped. So,
which is inherently going to happen when you're in a long-term relationship, like when you've grown up together, right? Because you never got to leave that older version. Like imagine, that's when Facebook first got popular. I was like, oh no, like I thought I was done with all of that high school stuff. I'm like, now people are going to be able to find me, and it's gonna, oh gosh, because you like move to,
and then you feel bad about not like keeping it. And when people like the high school reunion stuff, and
because getting away like allows you to grow. But when you're choosing to be with one person, one life partner for the remainder of your years, you have to have like an amazing ability to expand and grow and be constantly confronted with that old version of yourself, on some level, or that layer that for other people they just kind of let behind. And I know you and I both know people who, they feel like they got to go have a whole new friend group in order to become themselves, or they're ashamed about something they said or did, so now they don't talk, to, like, they just abandon the whole situation and they just start fresh with new friends, new city, new whatever.
But the thing is, that's just the same patterns will repeat, the more you do that, right? So I think in a marriage, especially with this marriage that you're talking about, that's 20 years, which is such a gorgeous, beautiful commitment to be celebrated as well. This is the time where there is expansion desired. And what helps, I think, is like, we take communication for granted too. I think, someone who's been in lots of long relationships, that, this term container or space and safety, it's new in a lot of long-term relationships because you just get used to doing things an old way. But there is something inside of this woman that wants to come out and play. And the only way her partner is going to be able to step into that shift and transformation to widen the container of their marriage is if she expresses that, and the truth is it's already happening. It's already set in motion, because the fact that the question has come our way means that this is definitely not the first time. So there's probably a slow buildup, ramp up happening, that there's a new part of her that wants to be explored. And the truth is, her partner deserves the possibility to explore that with her before we start thinking, oh, one partner can't satisfy me the rest of my life. And this is when we just go and we just like try all these other options. It's like, or, you already have mastered, if this is a monogamous relationship, you've already mastered monogamy, or you've already mastered relating and worked on it for this long and fine-tuned the nuances, what would it look like to try something that y'all have never even tried before?
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and that whole beauty of, working through it together and trying new things and all of that. And I feel like my personal choice, I'll get a little personal here right now, but my personal choice in this whole navigating sex and relationships was not to end up with my high school sweetheart. I was not the type that was not my preference. Because I really wanted to have a variety of experiences. And I'm sort of the same way when I go shopping. I don't buy, even if I love the shirt that's like right in the front of the store, I still want to cruise around and look at what else is there. Or maybe it's my Jupiter in the 8th house, I don't know, Jupiter and Gemini in the 8th house, like curiosity, expansion, sex, like all these things. It's like, I want to kind of explore myself. And I know that in my earlier years, I tended to be more orgasmic with a partner that was not my long-term partner. I'm not saying that I was having affairs. I've always been very loyal, but in between relationships, when, I would have sex with someone that there was like an intense attraction to, or that I might end up, I was kind of dating, but not really, like, we didn't have a commitment or whatever in the beginning, when it was still like the possibility of something more coming out of there. And I was just going off of pure connection and knowing that I might never see this person again.
Right.
That is when I was most orgasmic, because I had nothing to lose. There was no vulnerability hangover, because it didn't matter. I might not see them again, and I had one partner in college that I actually thought I would literally never see him again. I thought, this is going to be my one night stand, like this is going to be it. And it turned into like a 4-month big drama filled ridiculousness. But the only time that I was orgasmic with him, even though I very much enjoyed that sexual aspect of our relationship, was that first night, because it was like it was like my fantasy, and it was all about me. I wasn't tuned into him, or I didn't care how he felt about me. I didn't care about any of that stuff in that moment. I mean, I'm 21 or something at this point. And it wasn't until I got to fully understand myself and my desires. And unfortunately, nobody taught me about self-pleasure. Nobody taught me about the deeper layers of tantra or all this. So I'm trying to figure this out through partners, right? And through having sexual experiences with other people. And so as I'm learning through that process, I'm learning what I like, what turns me on, how my sexuality operates. And then once I kind of learn that and I could communicate that with my partners, is when I started to become more orgasmic with my long-term partners, right? And then it's like opening this willingness to be emotional and vulnerable. But that can be hard when you are, the next morning, it's like, now you're doing life together, or you're going back to dating, or you wanting them to see you also for your mind, or all these other things you have to offer. And I think this is where the Madonna whore complex comes in, because there's this very subconsciously programmed belief that you can marry this type of woman, but this is the type of woman that you have fun with, right? We are all that woman, as long as we will have a desire to be in partnership or marry. We are all marriageable, to use your word that you talk about a lot, because who doesn't deserve to have partnership? We are human beings that thrive on connection. We're built that way. So that the whole notion of saying that this is only a woman that you don't date or you only fuck with, and then this one is just the one that you marry, it's preposterous.
Right.
It's really preposterous. So where did this notion come from? And you brought up movie, songs, media. Okay, crazy thing. I went to the gym with my daughter the other day. We're working out together. We're both listening to our hip hop playlist. Mine is like going back to like 2018, 2019. I'm like, oh yeah, I love this song. I remember this song. There's some Drake in there. There's like all kinds of, Travis Scott, like all this music. And I'm like, I had the best workout. We were working out forever because we enjoyed the playlist. I ran my Healy, my energy medicine device, on my aura after the workout, because I'm like feeling great. I'm thinking it's going to be great. It was so low. It was so bad. And I was like, how did that happen? And I realized it's the fucking lyrics. It's the fucking
lyrics. I thought, was it the gym, like the gym atmosphere?
It was the lyrics, because even though I like the beats, I love those songs. It reminded me of like happier time, like times where I was having fun or whatever. The lyrics really aren't good. They're like, you know. I mean, they're, even if they're not full on saying like whore or stripper or whatever, they're still just like this grappling of uncommunicating, not very deep relationships, kind of using people and being confused about love, and like all now money versus like relationships, and like these are the themes, right? And a lot of these songs that we all love that are like pumping into our subconscious. I'm like, no wonder we can't sexually enjoy ourselves when this is what we're listening to. And I'm like, oh man, now I gotta like curate my playlist. And then I thought of you, because at Movement Medicine, you're so conscious about the songs that you play, and you have such good music with such good beats, but also like such inspiring, positive lyrics that are really empowering to women, right? And
Mm.
it's none of that noise or whatever. But that definitely impacts our functioning too. So just as an example of culture. And I
Totally.
thought, oh man. And yeah, so that sort of thing is, we don't even realize when as women we're faced with this kind of patriarchal culture every moment of the day. And we might even like it. We might even
Yeah.
like the song. We might like the fact that he gets jealous and controlling when another guy looks at us or whistles at us. We might like these things that are really about, control and ownership and
A lot of narcissism. If you talk about narcissists
yeah,
a lot of narcissistic, mentality on both ends, not just,
romanticized,
yeah,
romanticized.
yeah, just not men, the women too. It's like very narcissistic and a lot of I deserve, you know, it's interesting to feel like you deserve anything when you're not doing anything in full service.
Right. And I feel like for women who want, so maybe they had a taste of like this orgasmicness or whatever, right? And they're like, oh, I love that feeling. I want to experience it again. If I have to choose between being the Madonna and the whore, a
Right.
lot of women would rather just choose the whore.
Mm.
But some women choose the Madonna and then they get really jealous of the whore, and this is how you end up with these other women conversations. We have a full-on vocabulary about it: side chick,
Right.
whatever else, side piece, to make it even more degrading. And then women they want to reclaim that, so then they flip it on men and call them their side piece and all of this stuff. And it's like this whole culture, and this is what makes up most of the songs on the radio, right, that we are constantly hearing. And yeah, it's really a problem, and it's a problem for men because it affects their arousal, I think, in the same way that porn does. Because now they're like, oh man, I married the good girl because she's the one I want to impregnate, and she's the one I want to like cook for me and like take care of me my whole life. But wow, that one over there, that's the one that really gets my dick hard, like that. Like, it's so compartmentalized. Like, why is this normalized?
Oh, and it,
Why
it
is this?
definitely promotes what Shofar calls the auction block culture,
Mm,
and it's like we put each other on auction blocks constantly, and that's big part of the programming too. I would say, in a long-term relationship, in a long-term relating, that stuff starts to come out, and oftentimes our partners would like to break those old codes as well. They also have things. I would love this woman who wrote this question. I think it's important and interesting to do the work around, what edges are you ready to skate right now? And it might not even be sexual edges. They may be edges in other parts of your life, but you feel most free and safe to share your edges in the bedroom with your partner, but you're not really talking about it. So there's something that wants to expand, and surely I think that your partnership probably also would like to experience your expansion. Like
mhm.
most couples and partners, their highs become their new lows, and we really do have that ability. We have so many cells in our body, and I think that we are programmed by what you're talking about to think that, oh, it gets old, it gets boring, it's supposed to, once it get, oh, 20 years, it's a long time, oh, 30 years, 50 years, how'd you do it? And it's like, it doesn't have to be that story. We've been sold that story because it supports a larger storyline that is about separation, oppression. It's about divorce, and it's also about making money off of divorce.
Yeah, and I again, like going back to my own personal orientation, I could have done it. I could have married I know myself, and I could have married my high school sweetheart and had an amazing sex life for the rest of my life if he was willing to open up with me. That's the only thing that
Right.
is necessary. And that's why I'm not scared of a long-term partnership now. like, I know that as long as that person is open, we're going to go to like amazing places that you can't go to when you're trading in partners and you have to start all over again, you
This
know,
is true.
with the
This
same.
is true. And also if she's feeling a vulnerable hangover or like a, you know, just like sometimes when you expose yourself and you're really raw and the next day you feel just like, oh my gosh, regretful a little bit. Like, what did I do? Or like sometimes when people drink and they really let loose, and the next day it's like, oh man, like how did people take me and my wildness? And like, it's not that somehow you're just like judging a part of yourself that is a part of you. It wasn't a mistake. Like that's kind of what I'm also trying to say. Like, how about looking at this as like, wow, there's this part of me that's introducing itself to me that wants to come out and play. It's nothing wrong about you that you did this or that this came through and that this happened. And actually, your partner probably has some edges that they want to skate as well. So the more that, you look into where are those places where I would like to stretch, and oh, I stretched, we had great sex, we tried something new, what is the vulnerability around? That's for her to do. That is not about her partner. And once she's able to get clear on what that vulnerability is, like what the root of that vulnerability is for herself, and then you have the tools to kind of talk about that with your partner, then the partner has the choice to expand the container and the space so that that vulnerability can now be, again, an exploration instead of a hindrance or a regret. Because probably when she's felt this vulnerable before has felt shut down. And so it's time to heal that. It's time to reparent that. It's time to grow that up. And if your partner is willing, awesome. If your partner is not willing, well, that's another series of conversations and discussions.
And so much too with religion, because
oh my gosh, totally.
Yeah. And especially like, when I grew up with Christian influences, so I visited many different churches, but it's all the Bible, right? And in the Bible, Eve ate the apple. So she is the origin of original sin, like she is the reason. So right away already, because you had to be naked, Eve, and like be enjoying yourself a little too much in the Garden of Eden, and you had to have that apple, you were so curious. Now we all have to suffer. And I was even told that that's why women feel pain in childbirth. That was God's punishment.
Oh, wow.
For, Eve eating the apple and going after, this like human desire of pleasure. And so I feel like that leads into our next question, which is, this viewer asked, Natasha, you said in your episode that women often, when they have their first orgasm in the same sexual experience, that opens them up to future orgasms. They're just kind of, now they're ready to go for more if they so choose to continue the lovemaking. And she said, how come I can have like a really great orgasm and then just be done? And 5 minutes later, it's like I'm back to baseline and I really don't have any desire for more orgasms. And I'm just kind of back to, normal again. Why is that happening? And I feel like a portion of that is, again, the culture, but also like women are conditioned to shy away from pleasure. We're conditioned to deny ourselves of pleasure and instead pain. Pain is what we're sold. Pain through religion, the childbirth, the whatever. Like, and women love to commiserate and bitch to each other about all of their pains. But how good are we at celebrating each other? Not nearly as good. And celebrating another woman's pleasure, or going after our own. And so we actually have to have courses and formal things to like really teach us to and stay consistent with our pleasure. So of course we had one orgasm. We don't want to be greedy and take up any more of his time or have more, but we're not even aware of our capability of how expansive that is. And I think about, your circle in movement medicine. And you always say when a woman is in the center of the circle and she's dancing and she's having her experience, she's dancing it for every woman. That's how connected we are, right? So if one woman is having an orgasm, she's lighting up another woman she's making her more orgasmic. And that's just how women operate. Like, so like our capacity for pleasure lights up another woman. And that, that can get get her there faster. So the idea is to try to stay as lit up as possible, and to even light each other up, by encouraging that and going against this patriarchal culture.
Yeah, I feel like this is a place where science and religion, they unfortunately they kind of have hijacked or taken over the spiritual concepts, because to me, orgasm is such a natural thing, right? It's like everything in nature. Like when plants orgasm, we get fruits, and we eat those. We eat that potential energy, and it's good for our bodies, right? I mean, people go and get chlorophyll. They like want to get that, like that amrita. They want to get that raw, blessed amrita and put it in our bodies. Like, we're looking for plants that are thriving in the sun. Imagine if strawberry.
Slow down and tell some people that maybe don't know about amrita. What is amrita? Because
it's like a bliss nectar, and women produce it in their bodies. Everybody produces it, really, is a belief. But when you go deep into meditative states, it can be released from, it's almost like from the spinal tap. And some people will even say that deep meditation, you can have a sweet taste in the throat that's coming down from above. I've also heard of experiences where women go into such deep energetic orgasms, or like a deep stimulation on the throat, that they can actually pull a fluid up from that sacral chakra, and it comes up through the mouth and actually can be shared even with the partner. And it's supposed to be really, really potent and really, really pure. And so amrita means nectar, translated. So that chlorophyll is like the plant's nectar. It's like your life essence fluid, right? And there's different variations of amrita. Some people would say, yeah, pussy juice is amrita, right? It's nectar. Yeah. So it depends on which lineage or which line of thought you follow for that. So that being said, in nature, imagine if one strawberry was like, oh, that strawberry is in full blossom. I'm just not going to be fruitful today. That doesn't happen. It's like one strawberry blows up, then another one. Before you know it, it's like strawberries everywhere. And it's a patch of strawberries. It's not like one strawberry no more can grow. Like, nature just doesn't work that way. One flower isn't like you're taking all the sun. It just doesn't. It's all about support and this beautiful network beneath the surface that you don't even see, that's constantly communicating and thriving with each other, and really just maintaining the general pulse of the planet. It's not about me. And somehow we've created a culture where, like, even in sex, it becomes about me. When's the last time a woman is trained or told, or in a movie, in a show, I don't know, whatever we watch out there that's out there anymore, I don't know. I feel like I'm so just like not in what's normal anymore. But when's the last time you see a woman have a fucking mind-blowing orgasm and then just say, yes, thank you, more please? Shout out to Carrie Nola, right? Yeah. How much are we trained to be in a bliss state and say, there's even more to come?
Basically what it is in the movies, he grabs her hair. She's like, oh, I'm so turned on by your violence. And then, then she's like coming 2 minutes later, which is so unrealistic. And then we try to like match our arousal and desire cycle to this male aggressive, like immediate come super fast thing. And then we're like, oh, I had one orgasm, I'm good now. I did what he did. And
that's the thing, right? It's also, it takes me back, which is eerie and gross, but the saying that we used to say, I don't do this anymore, but in kindergarten, you get what you get, don't get upset. It's like, oh, why are we telling children that? Like, no, that's not what it is. It's like, actually, this is what I desire. How can I get what I desire? What's available? What are my options? Choose. And we're taught to settle sometimes a little too much, and to be happy you're even having an orgasm, or shit, you don't want to hurt his feelings, so you fake your orgasm. I think that this is all of that same thing, where it's like you're like, okay, it's almost like hearing that there's an option to have waves of orgasm almost makes perhaps this listener a little bit uncomfortable, and I would like them to maybe explore this piece of what is so uncomfortable about having limitless pleasure for you, or for having a pleasurable time and there being more, like that perhaps there is more to your orgasm than what you're experiencing now, and there's more to satisfaction and abundance of emotion than what you're experiencing now. And how do you feel about you and your partner creating the space so that once you've had your orgasm, instead of your partner turning over and laying down and falling asleep, the partner stays engaged so that they can ride that, catch the next wave? Because what happens is if you don't catch the wave, it will crash on the shore. That's true. Yeah. And there'll be more waves. It's really not a big deal. However, there is this magical opportunity, and it sounds like it's intriguing you because when Natasha said it, it caused something in you to wake up. So what is actually holding you back from realizing there is more pleasure for you to experience in your sex life right now?
And I would say more pleasure to experience in life in general, right? Because it's
it's probably relating to a couple of areas.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't, relate that to something else? Okay, you're happy in a job. Don't ask for a salary and I just wait for the regular raise, even though you're like really committed and working. Just roll over and be done, even though you think you deserve more, and that you put in the work, and that you actually would like more. Right? What would we tell that employee? We would say, wow, you should really speak your truth.
Yeah. Well, and when you touch on the waves too, you're alluding to this ability, I guess, that women and men have, but women, I feel like, are more biologically primed maybe to operate this way. Again, I'm speaking simply from my research perspective. Of being, again, multi-orgasmic, and like from beginning to end, it can be an orgasm. So there's a book called Extended Massive Orgasm that I learned about through Mama Gina's program. I thought it was phenomenal. It's by doctors Steve and Vera Badansky. I think they probably lived in like a kind of like polyamorous tantra community at one point, but they really, it's basically tantra. They're going into tantra, and they're talking about the energy and the polarity and all of this stuff, and how to create an extended massive orgasm for a woman. And it can last hours long because she's just going through peaks and valleys and riding waves, and it's like up and then it's down and it's up, and she's just taking it as she has the appetite, right? Or the desire. And then I recently watched a video, I think it was on Shofar's YouTube, on Nityama, and he's basically saying the same thing, that, she can be orgasmic for hours upon hours if you just keep the energy going. So this is what women, we just don't know that we're capable of this, again, because we're looking for like this time limited, outcome based thing where it's supposed to do this, and first base, then second base, linear, fourth base, then poop, peak, orgasm, ejaculation, poop, done, go to sleep.
Well, think about where do we get our sex education from?
Movies, porn.
And the sex ed we receive in school is just, come on.
Usually not even allowed. Still to this day, it's like you have to sign this permission slip, for
so, it. We've been duped again. It's another place of society being duped and not realizing how powerful and magical they truly are. And why would we want to? We have to ask ourselves the question, why are we continuing to support systems that aren't allowing for the expansion of who we are in all areas of life? Like, why should any of us live limited lives? Why?
And I will say too, as we're answering these questions, we don't know the full context. So we're coming up with multiple answers that might not fit. So all respect to the viewers. And if you had
they're good. They're good conversation builders. Yeah.
Good conversation builders, and super grateful for the vulnerability to even ask and give permission to, talk about it on today's show. But I also feel like there's this thing that could be happening, whether for this viewer or sometimes for women, because I've been here too. I only want one. Like, my pleasure cup is full. Like, I feel full, and I'm like, I am content. I am good. Now sleep is I would rather sleep, or I'd rather get this work done, or I'd rather do this. Other times I'm like hungry for more, So I feel like also understanding where you're at. But if it's like that every single time, then that's something, look at these expanded possibilities. But I sometimes, again, I think it has to do with women's capacity for pleasure. And we're just not accustomed to a world allowing us much pleasure, let alone convenience, and so to be able to feel such massive amounts of pleasure, it's like a muscle that you have to build up, I feel, because I will be in an interaction where I'm like, okay, I need to take a pleasure break. I call it a pleasure break, and I just have to like let the energy move through me because it's almost too much. It's like I feel like my whole body's going to explode and I don't even know who I am anymore. So I'm just like, okay, let me digest it, let me just like feel all of the sensations and let it ripple through, and just like let my breathing kind of normalize again, and then we can start up again, because it can be very, very intense sometimes. I feel like, especially as you get more into the energetics of it, and that energetics, you cannot have ever trained in any kind of energy medicine, but you have this deep emotional connection. We're talking about,
Totally.
people that are in these long-term relationships, you have this deep emotional connection. There's some massive energetics there. You know what I mean? So it's like you can create those energetics by doing your own work, by building up your vagus nerve and your compassion muscle there, and doing your breathing and your mindfulness and living life in this way, or going out and appreciating the sun and the flowers and then whatever. Now you're going to appreciate all those moment to moment experiences in your sexual session too. But there's that energy of deep emotional intimacy that you can only build after 20 years, 30 years, 40 years with someone. You know what I mean? So honoring that, and yeah.
Is this the same? Are these questions, is it the same, or is this a different woman? What did she say? What
Same person.
Because I was also going to say that that makes sense to me, because of course you're going to feel like one and done if your kundalini, when it wants to play, it's feeling shame the next day.
Yeah.
So do you see that cycle that's happening right there for this individual? And also you're going to feel like one and done if you don't have multiple ways of being and feeling orgasmic. That's the program in you, that's only that is, we're working so hard on this, and it's truly going to take a long time. It might take generations. That we really need to expand our definition of orgasm and see it as orgasm is a release of tension, period. Period. So whatever you do that releases tension has the potential to be orgasmic. And we've been really brainwashed to believe that orgasm requires genitalia. And the truth is, what's happening in the body can happen in so many different ways without physical touch, without genitals. It is true, and it is a proven fact. I mean, your Healy could probably prove that shit for us.
Well, it says it in the research too. So Gina Ogden, who, I don't know if you know who Gina Ogden is.
I do.
Okay, yeah, she spoke at Esalen before she passed away. I was actually going to do her workshop, and then later on, I know you did some work at Esalen too, which I want to get to, but I couldn't. Still have yet to get to this place I've been reading about for 20 years, and it's not that far away.
So pretty.
Yeah. Now it's probably not a great time to go there. But I mean, there was a lot of cool shit happening there in the beginning of this like mind body connection. And Gina Ogden did this research study. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist, lesbian, and a PhD as well. And she self-funded this study called Integrating Sexuality and Spirituality, and she named it the ISIS study. She had to change the name after the terrorists took up that name. You know what I mean? I was not able to do that with my daughter. So she's just rolling with it. She's just rocking it. Just yesterday, she showed me, Mom, look, I can't order from this website because they won't accept my name. They said I'm not allowed to put that name in there. So it's pretty crazy. But anyway, side note, she did change it to a different thing, but she developed this whole program around it. And she did research from people. Most of her participants were in a relationship for 25 years or more. And they were all sorts of people. They were sex workers, they were LGBT, they they were heterosexual couples. It was just like a very wide range of sexual experiences. And what she found is that long after the genitalia doesn't function the same way that it used to in maybe younger years, people are still experiencing extraordinary sex. And in fact, the sex that they're experiencing is more extraordinary by their self-rating than in their earlier years, when now their phalluses aren't getting as hard and they're not getting as lubricated because of this energetic connection and this transcendent kind of unity that they're playing with in those sexual moments, as well as just the sensual moment to moment touch. And so she was one of, I think, the first researchers to uncover this by, I can't remember how many people in her study, but it was the largest. And I still don't think there's been anything really that compares to it. So I became her research was the reason that I committed to switching my dissertation topic.
Wow.
Because I was like, wow, she's really onto something and I would love to learn from her. And then I tried to get to her workshop, and I even spoke with her over email, and I was like super excited to meet with her. And then she passed away, and I was like, oh man. But then again, just solidified my desire to keep this going because she's not here anymore.
Right.
But when they did, so then there's another research study where they used kind of like her theories and taught this moment to moment, like sensual touching or sensual experience, not outcome based, just like feeling the energy. And they taught it to men. Men actually reported higher satisfaction in these sexual interactions as well. So again, it's like what women need also benefits men. I kind of feel like in the school system, because I was working in the school system, I think still when I first came across this research, and you as a former principal and teacher and all this stuff are familiar with how the school system operates. But I always felt like when they switched to Common Core and they're making it lessons accessible for autistic kids and sensory, neurodivergent kids, it's like they need that kind of instruction, but it still benefits all of us because it's a multi-sensory experience of the curriculum.
That's
right? And so I kind of felt it's the same way with sexuality, but what's the resistance?
The resistance is really just a program. It's our own program. That's the only resistance, is our own programming. What you said, religion, culture, media, like this is the programming that's making us think that we can only, if we tell our neural pathway that you can only receive pleasure this way, it will follow. And if you're in a marriage where you're practicing the same pleasure practices, it's like you're driving on the highway the same way home. Yes, that's going to work. It's going to get you home, but there's also all these other ways to get home. And we have to remember that they're limitless. They're limitless. And both men and women have to drop the ego around the idea of one being, the needing to be the ultimate sex god, without doing the work. Like, seriously, get over yourself if you're not doing the work to expand your sexuality and your intimacy in your marriage. That's not going to last. It's not going to last. Like, we have so many more spaces to go with feeling. If we only use 5% of our brain, and when we just tap into plant medicine, and now what they're doing and seeing with plant medicine, what's helping PTSD and helping other types of sexual dysfunctions and sensual and emotional and shadow work and all this. And that's just accessing a little bit more of our brain. Imagine what we can do by unlocking with the tools that we already have, which is imagination, breath, and movement. And then we have these external tools like sound and vibration. But the truth is, even sound and voice is all here. We literally have all of nature's tools to explore so much more of our ability to sense, feel, and heal. So it really comes down to, you got to do things different if you want things different.
Yeah, well, just before this podcast, we had our monthly inclusion group, our community that we meet with once a month. I'm starting a new group in 2 weeks, but Shofar brought you up.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he dropped some of your wisdom too tonight. He
Oh,
led a beautiful qigong practice. It was like, it felt like it was 2 minutes. It was like 20 minutes. I was like, whoa, where did I go? But it was so lovely. And he said, like we were talking about grief and how experiencing the feelings and experiencing the pain and experiencing it is what leads to your orgasmicness. Like, the roots bring to the flowers. And he said, to quote Kirti, it's and I'm going to forget the quote, but you'll know it. He's like, most people want to stick it in the crown, but they got to get on the ground, like they got to do the groundwork and like really start to move through emotions and start to move through these feelings and face them and be able to feel them. And like Shafar said something really profound tonight too. It's like, when you're done feeling them, then use the qigong, use the tools to transmute it and like get it out and move it. You're done. Let's process it now. And I never thought about that, because again, we love our duality. So it's like, feel it and just face it and stick with it and just sit with it until it's gone. But sometimes people get stuck there, so you have to have the moving through. And then some people get stuck, they just want to move through, they don't want to ever look at, they're like, oh, not that, and then they just want to move through. And we have this in this world where we're doing things where to heal, you're either just talking, which is your traditional talk therapy that did not work, which is why I left that mode. I'm like, I can't do my work here. I can't do this. You got to let me get into the nervous system, the body, like the dreams, like all of this stuff. So I kind of left that traditional paradigm. And now, and always there's been movement techniques, yoga classes, but how many yoga classes do you sit and talk afterwards and process? Yours, you do. That's what I love about, again, your movement medicine. I was just thinking, coming home yesterday, how beautiful it is that you allow space at the end of the practice for people to talk, to just share whatever's coming up, because that's how we even build connections and relationships start to form and cross connections start to form. Otherwise, you could go to the same damn class and have an amazing experience for 2 years and never even know the person's name that's dancing next to you, because you don't have that space. So it's like, how do we equally focus on the acknowledging and the talking and the moving through and the movement in the mind, actually really connecting the mind and body in equal measure, rather than just focusing mostly on this or focusing mostly on this, right?
Well, I think most of talk therapy, most of the therapies we see out there, even in the educational world and counseling, and that it's so latent with creating lifetime clients, not having people progress and move through. And if we just focus on talking about it, but we don't have a thing that's going to, like, what is your tool to change it? Mm-hmm. So, it's like, we've got to be willing to recognize that, like, wow, I'm talking about the same thing still over and over. It's because it wants to heal. It keeps coming up because your body is done. Like, everything, your body is letting you know, like, I just don't want to feel this anymore. Like, we don't want to do this pattern anymore. And I don't want to have to, at a point, you almost get tired of hearing yourself talk about stuff.
Oh God, right? I've been there.
Right. And it's like, you're like, damn, it's the same fucking story. Really? Yeah. That's usually a sign that it's like,
it's ready to go.
It's ready to go, or it's about to become dis-ease. It's about to, you're about to, you're rushing through, so you're not being mindful, you might fall. There's all little things that we do to create situations for ourselves so that we actually we have to sometimes force ourselves to let go of that old story. But there are much more graceful ways to do it, which is, slowly unwinding the programming.
Well, and you can't, so another thing Shafar reminded us of tonight was, energy follows thought. So if you're constantly repeating this story, of course it's going to end up in physical illness or physical disease. But also, you have to tell the story until it's heard. Right. It's fully heard, right? And so we see that now with like BLM and all these social justice movements. It's like, yeah, we can't be looking away. We have to really hear this story, see it, reflect back that we see it and hear it before it can digest. And
this is perfect. So if this woman was to share the story of what she's feeling, right, that the next day she's having these feelings of like regret after being totally wild and free with her husband and showing new parts of herself to him, perhaps new facets of her sexuality, and that also, she's having this feeling of kind of like a one and done, like I had a really great orgasm, roll over, I don't have the desire to have more. Even though I want her to be open that there might be a desire there because it piqued her interest and made her ask the question. So sometimes we have a lot of layers of just, that's not a lot, like just programming that's not allowing her to realize like it's okay to have that desire to have more than one. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And your partner would probably feel super empowered providing that for you also, so if this is the pattern, right? This is the pattern, even just, telling that story, but then the person who is hearing the story to reaffirm, I hear you. And even practicing tools of retelling what I hear you saying. This is what I hear you saying, or, okay, I hear you, because we keep repeating our stories when we don't have, we're sharing our stories with people who aren't listening. So that's why we're having to repeat it.
We don't feel seen or heard. Yeah.
Right. So once you find the right people, and this is the thing, it has to be an agreement. It can't just be like, these are my friends, let me tell them what's going on. It's like, it has to be an agreement. Like, hey, I'm processing some stuff. Do you have the space to hear it? Then you're going to feel heard.
Yeah.
But if we're just walking around with all these processings and we don't have systems with our partners, or maybe even our friends, if that's who you need to process with, if you don't have things that you and your that you can kind of trust with each other, it's like you're just saying the same story, and energy follows thought. And there's no like transmutation and alchemizing happening. So we need, this is why I went from traditional types of therapy and leading to more of this, where we need more tools and action-based processes that allow people to teach what healed them to others, versus here's my protocol, follow this, do it this way, because it's keeping people from exploring their own breakthroughs, honestly, and really their own abilities to stop their patterns and truly heal themselves, and have that empowering feeling of like, oh shit, I made it through that, and look, I've created a whole different reality for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's where the gold is. You say the treasures are in the trauma, and that's so true. And I just went through another layer of darkness, a little mini dark night of the soul, January and February. It was pretty mild. I hope that my biggest ones are over. I feel like I'm hoping that the ones that come, because I know my path is, I was just told this in my human design reading too, which I'll have Kelsey on later to talk about that on the podcast. But to experience trauma so that I can like move through it and then teach others how to. And I'm like, oh, who signed up for that shit? Like was that a good idea? But now I know at midlife that when I go through something hard, there's going to be so much fucking beauty on the other end of it. It still doesn't make it easier, I don't think. I just, because when you're in that moment of that pain or whatever it is, it just feels like, because our perception is so altered, it feels like it's never ending. It feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It can feel so alone. We can feel so isolated. And even logically, if we aren't, we just don't have the capacity in those moments to really look to see where our lifelines are, or to see what the potentials are. And that's where, when people, you talked about depression earlier, that's where people often get stuck and they don't know how to move out of that. So they can have an abundance of possibilities around them, but they just can't reach out, or they can't motivate themselves to actually do it, or they literally can't even see it because they're so in their thought, right, of where the energy is now going. And it's just, it feels so good to be on the other side of that. I'm like, oh, thank God it only lasted like 6 weeks, 2 months or whatever, but damn. And in comparison to everything else that's going on in the world, it feels pretty minor. But for me, it was a huge internal shift, really huge. And maybe I'll look back at it 10 years from now and be like, whoa, actually that was way bigger than you even gave it credit to. But yeah, this opens up such an expansion to be able to move through that, to build these resiliencies, to build this muscle, I feel like, to get to that juiciness of life. And people do not realize how this is related to your sexual energy too. And so what am I doing this morning? Like I slept in, I had a beautiful day, Sunday fun day, dancing with y'all, drumming, family day, went to the gym with Isis last night, and then just really just luxuriated in bed this morning and let my body rest. And then I got up by doing dancing and sensual
Oh,
movement. And I'm like, I am not sharing at this time my sexual energy with another human, but I am like just enjoying it all to myself, and to just feel that beauty that came out of that time of just not being able to move. I'm so grateful to at least have enough mobility to move, even though I have another surgery, and also knowing I have a knee surgery coming up in a couple of weeks, knowing I'm going to be on crutches again for a while. So to get all the movement, even limited movement I can get in now, until I get to that point.
yeah.
And I did want to say something too about, and I'm looking at the time, so we got to wrap this up soon, but we did answer our 2 questions. But I did want to say something about the sexual experiences you talked about. If we're doing the same thing over and over, and we're still doing the same pleasure practices, and we're not allowing for that imagination or that creativity or that breath, I think of that also as kind of like maybe the masculine energy tendency is to be very structured, show up, be very linear, just like all the container is always there. And that's where then we can, it's the imbalance, right? Now maybe his masculine energy is going into routine, because men have a far greater tolerance for routine than women do. Like the feminine, nah, we like to have some routine to like rope us in, that energy, but it's like explore, create, expansive. And that's just feminine. That's not just women. It's like feminine energy. And so she wants to go to these other dimensions in the sexual experience. And if he's like, well, we always start at 5 and then we end at 5:03, and then I feel like relaxed so I can go to sleep or whatever, and then I eat a sandwich or whatever, if it's the same routine, she is going to be bored out of her mind. I mean, that's what happened to me, in my marriage. And I thought I was sexually dysfunctional. I was just bored. Like I just was bored. And we don't realize, and I think sometimes our male partners don't realize, because they're happy, they're content. Maybe they haven't gone to like other dimensions, and he doesn't even know his female partner can bring him there if he just like allows it to go there, if he loosens up the structure here a bit. And maybe he can apply that masculine energy to like, breadwinning. Or like,
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, you knew I was going to say that. Or like carrying in the water or taking out the trash, or maybe he is doing those things too, and he's very, very masculine, and it just like goes to every area of his life. So kudos to those guys, because I love those guys. I love those guys that just show up and they're like, I'm here, what do you need? And like you can always count on them, and you feel so safe because somebody's got your back. Like I love those guys. I meet with a lot of those guys and Veravia. They're financially successful because they just fucking show up, sometimes to their own detriment, So that's what I'm helping them with, like healing the body and healing their relationships now. But it's like, I love that characteristic, but when it goes too far, and now you're carrying that over into the sexual space where she could really take the lead, because I feel like the feminine leads the sexual, because her arousal cycle is longer, so she paces. The masculine has to pace to her and what her openness, so he like you said, sun and flower, he's the sun radiating his radiance, noticing her and watching her as she blossoms and blooms, and then he can kind of move in. But if she's not open, like it's not happening,
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
But what can happen when she's fully open? Like what problems can you solve? What worlds can you visit? What like transcendental experiences can you have? And that's the possibility that's there.
That's so true.
And
yes.
So many back into balance.
That's the magical spot. That's the magical area, is when you can realize that while in tension, there's trust to let go. Yeah, that's it. And that's holding both of awareness of both of those places. Like, and that's what it, basically when we're in the sympathetic state, that's orgasm. Right before orgasm is sympathetic. Everything's tightened up and it's holding. You're actually in the sympathetic state, but once orgasm happens, it helps actually being tense. Parasympathetic, it's all kind of chilled out at that point. So we actually need the tension so that we can trust the expansion and the bliss state afterwards, like what you said, those 2 months. It's like, and the more you do the work on, each of us do the work on ourselves to trust the tension, trust the triggers, trust the trauma. It's all got treasure there. It's a big treasure chest. And trust that beyond this tension is like a huge breakthrough. It just gets better and better. And we don't start rewriting current states of bliss with old story. And then you have to find a way to grieve and let go of the old way of being, because that is no longer where you want to be.
Expansion, growth. I mean, here we are. We got all the astrology with all this Pisces, so many planets in Pisces right now. That's Jupiter. That's expansion. That's the connection with the spiritual realm, and the shadow side of that is getting stuck in depression. That theme keeps coming up, but the other side is like, whoa, like this experience of like joy and possibility is mind blowing. And so let's stay on that mind-blowing side. So at this point, I'm just going to be super honest and just break it down. People, if you are needing that, if you are wanting that, now is your time. Like Kirti does New Moon, which is in person in San Diego every month. If you are not in San Diego, she does a beautiful full moon ritual to help with that, moving ritualistically, ceremoniously, helping you design your own ceremony to create your magic, to create your intention. And also Shofar and I, her partner, and I do inclusion together, which is actually the science-based, evidence-based, it's a totally evidence-based group, 12 weeks to heal the nervous system. So to practice to give you the science and to practice the techniques to heal the nervous system, as well as process the emotion. Because if you're wanting to have extreme transcendental sex, you have to heal your nervous system. Like you can't be going into, you're talking about old stories, getting triggered by the old story right in the moment of intimacy. Like you have to have that shit taken care of in order to be present, be here, be now. So for me, I love this group because it's not overtly focused on any kind of sexual healing, but it's just healing that is prerequisite to expansive sexual state.
Yeah, I love that.
So you can join at any point. You could do all the things, but now you've gone through a dark night of the soul. Boom, you go back to the basics, go back to the foundations. You could just be starting your journey, start here, and then it branches off to all this other loveliness. And apparently I've been talking with my hands again because the video is all blurry. Oh my goodness, this camera. I got to get a camera that can a webcam that can handle expressive talkers. People that talk with their hands, so I don't have to be blurred out. But anyway, I'll have those links for you to join Kirti and myself. Our next round is starting in just 2 weeks. So we only have 10 spots available each round. And it's very intimate. It's very obviously confidential. If you're interested, you need to contact me ASAP to get a spot. And yeah, Kirti and I are working on the same outcomes, the same philosophies in very different ways. So our work is very complementary. So let us help you. And thank you all for tuning in. Chad tuned in for a little bit, Kirti. He left us a little YouTube message. Peace, fam, sending some love. Got to roll, but sending you love, fam. So that was really nice. And if you liked what we talked about, send your questions. We're happy to answer them. Challenge us. Tell us what's going on for you. And we'll be back. I'm here every week for Goddess Vibrations, a spiritual sexual empowerment show. Kirti's here every 2 weeks. And we look forward to being with you again. And thank you again, Kirti, for being so consistent with your masculine energy, your beautiful balance of masculine and feminine, and how you're so consistent and supportive
Love it. It's just, this is so good for me too. So thank
Oh, good. Yeah, I find it very nourishing for me as well.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Peace and
Good night,
love.
everyone.
Bye.